chatting about it. So, is David K in the building?
Ooh,
This
not
is a David K
yet,
topic.
which is unlike him. I'm still holding out hope. I think he could still come on, but he's usually on time.
Yeah,
He's usually on time. I'll check my LinkedIn group chat.
that's all right.
Friends of the Fern. You guys know it.
Cool. Let's do it. What's up, everyone? Happy to have you here on Tuesday. I don't know about where you are, but I am broadcasting live from Boston tonight, and it was a beautiful summer day. It was maybe the first time. So I'm looking out the window here. The sun's going down. There's a bunch of people out in this cool bar. It's a really great time of year, and I say that because you all are here. You all are trying here to learn. There's a lot of other things that you could be doing. So I appreciate you being here, being part of the community, engaging with the content, being committed to getting better, all that different stuff. So looking forward to that. We got a bunch of events coming up next week. I think someone will drop them in the chat. I'll mention a couple of them. We obviously have Demand Gen Live. I'm doing an event with CVC Advisors on Thursday. That's a private event, and I think there's another one coming up on Thursday. We'll get you all of that different information. And then I mentioned a couple of episodes ago. I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago about how we're rolling out our pipe go-to-market framework inside of customer CRMs, and we actually got quite a bit of feedback from people that were either looking to learn more or looking to actually implement it. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper because there's a whole other part of this that I think it's super important, right? There's a big part of it about aligning your marketing team with sales, which I think is critical. Aligning based on the metrics, based on revenue and win rates and sales pipeline velocity, sales efficiency metrics that matter to your sales team, as opposed to MQAs, MQLs, leads, pipeline in parentheses with a poor definition, things like that. But there's a whole other angle that I wanted to mention about this because I think it's super fascinating. Like, we are rolling out a solution to attribution. Companies right now use software-based attribution. They only get a myopic view toward capturing demand, which I'm going to talk about in this innovation talk. It's a big part of it. They only get this view about what is capturing the demand. They try to build a community. They try to do LinkedIn employee advocacy. They try to run non-conversion based paid social. They try to launch a podcast. They try to do influencer marketing, all these things that intuitively we know as marketers work better than the things that we're doing before. But when they try them, they're all create demand strategies, or they should be, and they can't effectively measure them. So they just think that it's not working, or they can't prove it, and then it gets killed. And so this is a solution. If you are looking to create demand, there is not, in my experience and my perspective right now, there's not another solution on the market that's going to be able to do this. So if you're interested, you'd actually get both of those. You'd get the attribution solution and the pipe go-to-market framework, which creates standardized performance analytics for your team that gets benchmarked against all of our all the database that we have here. And that's a big part of what my company is trying to do. We're trying to move this space forward. This space is stuck. B2B marketing is stuck. I'm going to talk through the reasons that I think as to why. The first one is that the market continues to use decades-old frameworks that were created by companies that don't actually execute the strategies themselves. Most companies still use MQL, SQL, SQO, demand waterfall that was published in 2006. There's been incremental improvements. It was re-architected in 2012. It was re-architected in 2018. But they were all incremental changes. Incremental being like in 2006, we used the MQL. In 2018, we used the MQA. Everything else is the same, though. We're still just having marketing pass these things to sales, and then sales call people that didn't have to talk to us, and we're just spinning around, what? I'm trying to do the math in my head. 12, 18, something like that, years later, doing the exact same stuff. And it's just like, I went to one of the company's websites where these strategies exist, and I was like, I want to look at this. So I went and tried to look at it, and I got to the content, and it was behind a 10-field form. So if you want to take your strategy advice from a company that's still making ebooks and gating them in 2022, halfway to 2023, then be my guest. But if that's where you're trying to get your demand advice, is that how you buy? Is that what you want to do? Getting a little bit further here, the ecosystem in all of marketing, vendors, agencies, in-house teams, consultancies, everything around it is all built around capturing demand because of the need to prove ROI, a story that was made up by marketing technology vendors starting in 2007 and has progressively gotten worse and pushed the entire industry to only look at capturing demand. That's why none of the stuff, it's so crazy. Like, we're out there, my company's out there proving that there are way better ways to do stuff, both in real life and on 55 companies, for our business and for 55 companies right now. And there's still so much friction because of all of the inertia about what companies do right now and how stuck they are. The next thing that happens, so you got this whole ecosystem that's built around capturing demand. The next thing that happens is that most business executives, business professionals, do not really understand marketing. They think they understand marketing, but they actually understand sales. Because in B2B in 2012, when you were the VP of sales and marketing, or in 2022, when you're the chief revenue officer, you're really the VP of sales or the chief sales officer that just happens to be responsible for marketing, which is so crazy. You know what I mean? Like, would you go and put your CTO in charge of your finances? That's pretty much what you're doing here. You're taking an executive that doesn't understand a function and then putting them in charge of that function, a critical piece of the business. But to get back, most business professionals do not understand marketing, so they default to whatever they hear from people that they find credible. And all that they hear is about the ecosystem, about capturing demand, and this whole system perpetuates. People don't know what the information started, people don't know what they're talking about, they hear about this information, and it just spreads through word of mouth, and the cycle continues, and that's where we're at. And most importantly, innovating in marketing almost requires you, it's almost required for you to give up what you're doing right now and break what you're doing right now in order to do something different. And the fact of the matter is that no company is going to break the system that they're doing right now in order to move to another one, because it would cause short-term friction and pain. So they keep just running around doing the same old stuff, incremental innovation. Oh, we got intent data now. Oh, we bought some new software. Oh, our results haven't gotten much better, but we're doing a lot of stuff. And you just get stuck in this place where at some point we need to figure out a solution where we can move from what we're doing right now, figure out what we need to give up with confidence, and move to a new place. That's pretty much, that's like 4 or 5 reasons. That's what I got here. I'd love if people have questions, we can go a little bit deeper, but those are the things. Nobody's challenging the frameworks. I have no idea how we still use this MQL model from 2006, old frameworks published by companies that don't actually do demand themselves. An ecosystem built around capturing demand based on the facade of proving ROI. A failure to acknowledge that the way that they measure marketing stunts innovation and prevents companies from moving forward. The fact that most business leaders do not understand marketing at all and do not take the 20 to 50 hours required to actually understand what modern contemporary marketing looks like. Don't take the time to do that, so just play telephone game with whoever their friends are, their VCs or the tech vendors or those types of things. And just the fact that for whatever reason, companies can't give up the things that they're doing right now in order to dramatically move forward and transform their business forever. And that is the short version of why B2B companies do not innovate. Let's get into it.
You're lucky because David did show up and he does have something to say.
I knew it. I knew it.
This
is
just
his talk.
put on his marketing hat. He dropped a link to his LinkedIn post earlier, and I am going to bring on our favorite, David K. David, welcome to Demand Gen Live.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
How is everyone?
Hey, good to have you here.
Good to be here. I've missed you guys. I've needed to be here, and it's good to be here. MQLs. It's like a game of telephone, isn't it? You heard it from someone who heard it from someone who heard it from someone who never actually
did it.
Was a customer of Serious Decisions. Hands up, anyone who's been a customer of Serious Decisions.
I don't.
All right.
Hands, not many.
Yay, two. That's like 3. That's more than ever I would have expected. I think what I'd say is this: if you have a framework, make sure that everyone in the company who's involved with it has the same definitions of whatever it is you decide you want to call it. Call it an MQL, an AQL, a PQL, an FQL, an FU, or whatever. So have similar definitions if you can. Write them down. Make sure that everyone knows what they are. And then all of these things are really trying to do is give you waypoints along the line of from over there to over there. And for the folks who are listening, I'm pointing from one side of the room to the other side of the room, as if that was somehow a mysterious journey that a prospect might go down. So you start out at one point and you end up, hopefully, at the end in a sale. So you're just marking some points along the way. And the most important thing that's, I think, out of all any system we ever use is the ratios of conversion from step to step. Because when you divide things up and you have these ratios, then you can say, what can we do to make that ratio become a little bit better, converting from this to that, whatever you decide to call it, right? If you don't have any waypoints along the way, it's like trying to drive from Boston to LA without a map and just starting and pointing, and you've got no kind of markers along the way. Am I halfway there? Am I a third of the way there? Should I get gas? Whatever. So these definitions that we have, and I hope I'm not speaking too high level here. If I am, please just bring me right back down to earth.
You're good, doing good.
Okay, cool. So what I love about what you've talked about here, Chris, because you do it so well, is you bring reality to the situation. And you speak kind of representing so many people and so many truths. So so I'm a really big fan of yours, as you probably, and as everyone here probably can tell. Anyway, I can go on about this type of topic forever, but for me, call it what you will, whatever system you have, define it, share the definitions, make sure everyone agrees to the definitions. If people don't agree to the definitions, you're screwed right there. It doesn't even matter what you call these things or what steps they're measuring. And then aim to try and make the ratio of movement from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. It's the ratios we care about, not the actual numbers ultimately, because the ratio is a measure of quality, and the higher the ratio of conversion, therefore the higher quality, right? So one of the problems that we have with the MQL process is that the definition changed over time as serious decisions, and this is my take, I don't know if this is the real ultimate truth, but as serious decisions, that model was designed specifically for the large enterprise companies that existed of the day in 2005, 2006, of which I was working at one. And so I was a very early customer of this whole thing. And at the time, it was revolutionary language and really, really helpful. Very, very helpful, because you didn't use the word lead anymore, which is about the most confusing word ever known unto man. It's like love. What is love? What is a lead? I don't know. It's the same thing, right? So then Serious Decision had a bunch of customers who saying, yeah, but we're not like one of those big enterprise customers. We're one of these smaller places. And we don't have the teleprospecting group who can call up on the inquiries. Anyone remember inquiries? The forgotten step in the model? That's the beginning step. And so they said, well, okay, well, maybe we can have this model and we'll start at an MQL, which is a web download, which was never a part of the original definition, but that kind of fitted the workflow for a lot of other companies. And then it was another workflow and another workflow and another workflow. And they were trying to adapt to meet the needs of a differentiating kind of market where different go-to-markets were present. Anyway, I'm babbling on. My apologies. Sorry, I can get passionate about this too.
Yeah.
It's a fun topic, and there is no right or wrong in the end. Just choose your spots. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the background, David. You're one of the people that were, executing marketing at that point. So your perspective is really valuable. So thank you for weighing in on that. There's a couple I appreciate, because you just sort of like get me going on the thoughts too. So that was good. There's like the entire beginning of this process just feels so unnecessary. Like, why wouldn't, like, at this point, we're dropping people in that are sales ready, that are converting to sales qualified opportunities at 45 to 60%. So why do we even, we're just skipping lead MQL. Let's just get them into the sales conversation. And we bypass the SDR layer as well. Because when you have these frameworks, if you look at the framework closely, and if you read the instructions of the most recent one, it is marketing creates a signal. We pass it to a revenue development rep, a contact based on intent data from an account. The contact has never engaged with us, most likely. We pulled it out of a database, but the account has some level of engagement. And now we're going to take a revenue development rep and cold call these accounts. So this is the incremental part that I'm talking about, right? Let's add intent data to it. Let's call it a revenue development rep instead of an SDR. Let's do it for an account and deliver 5 contacts instead of 1 lead that we used to do. It's just incremental. It's doing the same thing with different new terminology and new technology, but it's doing the exact same stuff, which is sort of like one of the main reasons that I have a challenge with. And the reason is because if you did this for yourself as a business and you were doing the frameworks, if the company that made the framework and you're doing this for yourself, you would realize that it doesn't work.
All right, can I jump back in?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't claim to understand the latest twist, right? Which is working from a kind of a sales object. It's very much more account-based. I've talked to a few people about how to model that in a technology like Salesforce.com, like some of us might be using here. And in my simplified, probably incorrect way of describing this, it kind of brings into the to the opportunity object, a number of fields that we would have historically always seen and used in the lead object. And so it kind of, it's a different way of modeling things. And in the end, it's just a model. And the model is supposed to represent a certain kind of truth and make things simpler for us to understand and so forth. I'm not sure I fully get it. Maybe I'm just too old, or maybe I'm just too relational. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is this: there is what you talk about and what that model represents are not wholly incompatible. It's just a question of deciding to make them work together. And when I say make them work, I don't mean kind of like kludge it together. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is the thing that's so powerful about some of your messages over the last 2.5 years that I've known you, has been around the importance of creating demand, around the types of things that buyers are responding to, the way that buyers buy today, and the way to market and to appeal to them, go where they're seen, where they go, and so forth, right? And to kind of like be more informational, educational, so that the buyer has the information to self-select him or herself, mm-hmm. and so forth, right? Once they enter in and engage with you, the technology underneath it and the roles, obviously, it varies by type of business. I mean, if you're a business that sells something at $50, $500, $500,000, you're going to have different kinds of situations. But your marketing principle that you shared so well and so often, and we're grateful for the repetition because it really does help. You were talking earlier about how everyone keeps talking about the same things. well, one of the things I'm so glad about that you bring to this space is you've changed the conversation. At least among, the bazillions of people I see on LinkedIn. Anyway, I should kind of stop talking because there's other people who want to say something too, I'm sure. But just to say, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I'm not saying the hero framework isn't a great framework. I'm not saying that. If you've already invested and you have understanding across your sales team and they are wearing their sales hat, right? And they understand the definitions and everything's kind of working, then good. As long as you've got the definitions that are clear to everyone. But if it's anyway, whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think, and to be clear, I think that the sales side of the model is fine, right? Once you hit SQO, shit works great. The problem is the entire other part of the model where it operates in like a serial fashion where marketing does this stuff and then you just throw it over to sales and then some of them get there. I think that's what's causing the misalignment and everything, because marketing is delivering things to sales that either you might be right on the lack of definition, but I actually think this is a more systemic problem where marketing has been trained because of how they measure marketing and because of the high volume needs from executives that think that marketing still works like you just run an MQL machine like you did 6 years ago or like you do at Salesforce today, when it doesn't matter what Salesforce does. They're going to close business. So they're just running this big machine thinking that it works. You go and implement that on your 10 million ARR company, it's definitely going to fail.
Well, it's an interesting question. You just prompted the thought. Is it actually working better on the sales definition side? Because every company I've worked at, and at this point that's adding up to a few, they've marked from opportunity open to closed completely different ways. Every company's got a different way of doing 100%,
it. 100% based on Challenger or Sandler or whatever sales framework they use. Yeah.
Not even the frameworks. It's just like 5% will be this, 15% will be that. Some of them have you get up to, that I've seen, up to the contract, and that's 60%. And then there's all these other steps that are necessary because of the nature of the sale that they go through, which is very large and very complicated and very expensive. So they have extra steps after, I've delivered the contract. That's only 60%. Imagine they've got another 40% yet to go in their view. So everyone's defined it very differently.
Yeah.
Ironically, on the marketing side, this Serious Decisions has laid a framework that's kind of becoming a standard, for better or worse. Anyway.
Yeah. Great chat.
All right. Good.
All right. Do we have any other questions relative to innovation in B2B, Megan, or should we open it up?
So we actually had one kind of hot take on this, and it's from Tatiana. She's she's overseas though. It's 2:00 in the morning. And I thought we could kind of close this out because this kind of takes this in a completely different direction, but she kind of poses her take on this. And she says, perhaps the question should be, why is B2C or D2C marketing so innovative?
It's not.
She has an answer where she thinks that it is more innovative than B2B because they depend heavily on external ad or PR agencies that have a high churn of young talent, and B2B marketing teams are typically these like static internal marketing teams who basically like different marketers are part of the different ecosystems, and that is driving why in her estimation B2C marketing is more innovative. So
it's an interesting hypothesis. What I'll say is that like if you compare them, B2C or direct to consumer and B2B, like direct to consumer and B2C is more innovative because the bar is so low in B2B. But looking at B2C independently, I would say that they're actually not that innovative. They struggle with all the same stuff. They get stuck in attribution. They like all the same issues that are present in B2B. I hear from my B2C friends as well. The difference is that in B2C, typically there is no sales team. So marketing actually has to drive revenue. And when you actually have to drive revenue, you got to figure out shit that actually works. In B2B, however, marketing doesn't actually need to drive revenue. They just need to deliver MQLs for sales. They take attribution credit on things that would have closed anyway. They deliver 5,000 leads regardless of the outcome. All the other bad behaviors that get created because sales is the people that are accountable. They're the people that get fired when things don't go well. And like, because that's what happened in 2010 when you were a B2B revenue organization. Everything fell on sales. Marketing delivered a couple brochures and built a trade show booth here and there. And it's just sort of like incrementally evolved from there. But the key difference between B2C and B2B is that there's typically no sales team in B2C. So marketing gets forced to do things that are innovative and drive revenue. Like the idea, can you imagine a B2C company still running content syndication? Like how do B2B companies still do this stuff? How do they still do stuff? Because it doesn't get scrutinized against metrics that actually matter. So it just sort of like perpetuate. Like I know big companies, I'm not going to say names because people tell me this stuff in confidence, but huge companies that 10 days before the quarter's over are going to pump 500 grand into content syndication to hit their MQL number. Just wasted money to hit a metric that doesn't matter. So that would be my response. I think the point is very well taken, but my hypothesis as to why it happens is a little different.
Yeah, well, that was great. All right, we got a bunch of different questions and going in different directions. So let's transition and open it up for the AMA. I have Scott that I'm going to bring on first. Scott, I've been seeing you come to the show. Excited to have you on. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, Chris.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
I'm about 5 months into advertising on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I come from the land of search advertising and Facebook ads for years. LinkedIn's a different beast. I'm selling B2B, and I have a question about selecting a campaign objective. I've tested video, I've ran MQL, gated content, running retargeting as well on a 90-day list. But when selecting a campaign objective, I'm using for like creative top funnel text ads that I've ran organically that have done well. And now I'm just looking to promote them. I will usually do engagement as the objective, but I have a question if you've got any kind of insight on using a brand awareness or engagement, or to run both. My thought is that engagement objective will bias the delivery to the users that tend to engage with the ads versus users that matter. I plan to run both, but if you've got any insight here, could help save some time.
Yeah, the only I'm following you almost the whole way. The thing that sort of threw me off was you mentioned text ads in the middle. Can you help me? Like, are you running feed ads or really text ads? Text ads only get delivered on desktop in the top right hand corner, sort of like a display ad. Is that what you're talking about?
No. So when you're selecting the creative, it's basically a sponsored post.
Yeah.
Like
it's
all
in
I
the
have
feed.
is
You get an image or a video, and then you get some text, right? Like it's.
No, I don't. Not even image. So I don't want to use a carousel, static image, video, all those units that they suggest. What I do is I take a post and I'm sponsoring it. So I'm selecting previously published post, grabbing all that engagement, and it's just text. There's no CTA. It's pretty purely trying to make it look as native as possible.
Yeah, I think that's only possible if you do it that way. I don't think that you can go into an ad and create it that way. So I think you have to sponsor it, like you said, which is what threw me off a little bit. But thank you. So, what do you want to have happen? How is the success of this going to get measured?
So it's my strategy is two-step. So I do have like a 90-day retargeting audience based off of engagement, or site visits. So in the past, I'll run like an engagement objective, and I know the messaging is compelling. Even the stuff I'm running right now sees 4 to 6% engagement rate, which is pretty high compared to like other creative I've ran. And then what I do is I just retarget them, and I'll retarget them with different messaging. And a lot of it is like really like hard sell, direct response, get a demo, lead gen. So in this like top funnel or even mid funnel,
Yeah, it's
I've
just a
I've
two-step
shied away from
retargeting
awareness.
flow, essentially, right?
Yeah.
One cold. Once you get engagement, then it's just like DR conversions, right?
Yeah,
You're trying.
correct. Now, running engagement, my fear or my uncertainty is that LinkedIn's looking at this and they're like, okay, you want an engagement objective, I'm going to bias the delivery. Even though your audience is say 500,000, I'm going to serve it against a section of that segment of people that tend to engage with ads. So I'm only seeing like a sliver of that audience versus brand awareness. CPMs might be a bit lower, engagement might be bad, but it's reaching a wider spread of that audience I'm trying to target.
Talk me like we can get into the tactics of like what campaign to build, but to help other people and hopefully to help you too, I want to like back up and keep talking about the strategy, because this is where most LinkedIn advertising fails, at the strategy level, not at the which campaign type do I use level, right? So your strategy is two-step retargeting, right? I'm going to have a cold audience. Once they engage, I'm going to move them through a funnel and then try and convert them direct response inside of a LinkedIn, whether it's a lead gen form or on a landing page. You follow so far, yeah? What happens after that?
Well, it depends. If it's a piece of gated content, that's considered an MQL. So that triggers, I've got like a Zap set up, so a number of things happen. But they'll get the deliverable, then they'll get into an email sequence. I don't have any like lead scoring set up, but yeah, depending on the quality of that, I don't have like SDRs doing outbound against this audience either.
Got it. So
it's really
like, how would they get into a sale? They would have to re-engage on a more sales-driven conversion later in order to do it. That's the only way to get into the funnel or to get sales outreach.
Yeah, and in that email sequence, there are different calls to action that like book in for a demo. So that'll be from the demo page on the site or through a Calendly CTA that just round robins to an SDR.
How much does the product cost?
Yeah, so ARPA is about $270.
$270K, $270 per month.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So $270 per month times 12, we're at the like $3,000, maybe a little bit over $3,000 a year ACV. Yeah. Okay. Have you looked at how many people have MQL'd through like one of these direct response conversions so far?
MQLs about 15, and I only ran like a 2-week campaign. I was averaging about $80 cost per lead. On demos, I tried to beat $600 cost per lead. That's what we get off of like bottom funnel non-brand search that we win at about 40%. Our win rate's quite good, but yeah, so I'm always trying to benchmark off of that performance on my social.
Yeah, you'll never get that win. You'll never get that win rate direct response LinkedIn. It'll never happen.
Okay, I might not get the win rate, but if I can get a way lower cost per lead or cost per inbound,
you can try to make the math work for sure. Out of the 15 that have converted, how many have converted into an opportunity?
0.
Okay. Because you think it's going to take longer, or they just literally haven't panned out?
Hasn't panned out. It may, I don't know. Yeah, it may need more time. Maybe the gated asset wasn't compelling enough. And data's just low. Like, I think I would need 10x the volume to start seeing some sort of activity.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of math here just to help everybody out. So bear with me for 1 second, and then I'm going to get to what you should do. Okay. So in my estimation, right, I could be off by a little bit, but I think this is directionally correct that you should not be advertising on LinkedIn if you have an ACV that is lower than $15,000 a year running this play, because the typical conversion rates between the person who downloads the gated content to within 12 months becomes a customer is somewhere below 0.25%, but typically closer to 0.1%. So you're in this range, right? I've audited more than 20 SaaS companies. Every SaaS company runs this play. They measure on CPL. They never look at conversion through the funnel, and they just literally never see the data that shows this, that they win almost none of them. It's crazy. They're like, we want to track everything. We bought this $300,000 attribution software. We're going to pound attribution for all the stuff that we don't believe in, but then we're just going to blindly do stuff and not even look at the data for the things that aren't working. So that's sort of like my take on this generally. I think your ACV is simply too low to run this. There are some companies that have PLG that scale way out, like a Monday.com or things like that, where you can sort of amateurize the cost, but it's a brand play. It's not a direct response play, right? Monday.com advertises for brand, typically not a lot of DR. So I think you should reconsider this strategy completely, just based on the ACV, right? If you think about this as a business owner, you got a $3,000 product, you're selling it through sales, right? There's the buyer can't buy it on their own, right?
They can, but we prefer through sales.
Yeah. So like the cost of sales. Do you have an SDR function too?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Like $3,000 a year, you got to pay the SDR, you got to pay the lead gen costs, you got to pay all the marketing overhead, you got to pay the sales commissions to try and pay back $3,000 in the first year. I think it's just going to be really challenging. So, and Facebook ad costs have risen enough, and the targeting is not as great as LinkedIn, to a place where I'm not even like, direct to consumer brands have a lot of pressure that rode Instagram story ads for a long time and Facebook feed ads, and the price of the ads went from $8 to $20, and their customer acquisition cost just doesn't work anymore. To answer your question directly, if I was doing this, and the way that I recommend running LinkedIn ads, if you're running our strategy, which is not a lead gen strategy, is to use brand awareness, because I think that you get the most reach at the lowest CPMs, and you typically get lower CPCs because the LinkedIn algorithm just isn't that sophisticated. So you can optimize for website visits, and you actually still pay a higher cost per website visit than if you just ran brand awareness, is what my testing shows. And it can lower CPMs by more than 50%. So you're running a lead gen campaign at $120, $140 CPM, and you're running a brand awareness campaign at somewhere between $35 and $50 CPM. So the ad costs can go way down with the brand awareness. And then all you got to do is figure out your targeting, right? There's a couple other traps in LinkedIn that I'll educate you on, especially if you're like using an engagement and you haven't used it that much. There's a couple of boxes in there. One that's like allow LinkedIn audience expansion or something like that. Like if you use that with engagement, LinkedIn's going to go out and get random people to engage. That's what, I look at ads in the feed, and there's a couple ads occasionally that have like 1,000 likes on them. So I'm like, I'm interested, let's do this. So I literally click and I go and look at who are the people that have liked this. And it's like people that don't live in any relevant countries, you know what I mean? Like random countries and things like that. And people are back at HQ like, woo, 1,000 engagements on our ad. And it's all people that would never be able to even capable of buying from them or influencing a sale from them. So that's one trap. There's another trap on LinkedIn Audience Network where I'm not sure it'll apply to your placement, but they can take your ad and then serve it on a bunch of display ad things like that you don't really have a lot of control over. So anyway, I think I'm not sure where you would find it, but on the podcast at one time we talked through all the traps that LinkedIn has, and those are a couple of them. But yeah. I've talked for a long time, so I'd be interested in your reaction.
That's okay. That's helpful, and those are traps that I've definitely identified, both from your podcast and testing. But So maybe I'm out to lunch here. Is everyone on this call selling enterprise software, or
There's a lot of people that listen to this podcast. There's probably could be selling a product that's in your range. But when you're in your range, like it requires a different let me back up. Generally, it requires a different strategy on LinkedIn. I don't see this being a fruitful strategy anymore. Analyzing a lot of different companies that are doing it, and then at your ACV, it just gets even more pressure because ad costs continue to go up. Google costs are super expensive, right? And there's a bunch of companies that sell a 4K ACV product that rode Google for a really long time. And now Google's getting more competitive, more expensive, less effective, especially over the last 3 years as more and more money pours into it. And they just companies come to us and they're like, we literally can't, we spend $1 million a month on Google and we literally can't do this anymore. Our customer acquisition cost is more than 3 years. Help us figure out what to do. And it's like, you're in a real tough spot here because you can't just flip a switch and be like, okay, we're going to take all this money from LinkedIn and move it over here. So I don't think that you're necessarily out to lunch, but when you're I did a video with Justin Welsh several years ago. I think it would be interesting for you to look at it because he was a sales leader working on products that were in this 5 to 10K a year range, which is not too far off from where you are. And he came to the conclusion that even having SDRs run full cycle at that spend doesn't make sense financially if you're trying to target a 1-year CAC payback. Granted, there's tons of companies that are going to live with a 2.5 to 4 year CAC payback just because of business valuations. But if you're really trying to have a disciplined customer acquisition engine, there's not enough room to afford the SDR, the advertising spend, the marketing overhead, everything else in there. So the places to focus are in the smart organic channels, right? So get organic channels to work, dark social, podcast, whatever organic social channel, TikTok or LinkedIn, whichever one's most appropriate to your business, and then layer on paid as a sprinkle, as a nice to have, as an amplifier to sort of get the engine greased and rolling. But the main activities are probably leaning more organic at that ACV range. If it's fully product led and you can get people into the product, there are some ways that you can justify it, but customer acquisition costs will still be very high. You get signups for the same price that you're getting gated content downloads right now, but the progression to close one user the conversion rate still won't be great.
Okay. Yeah, that's all good insight there. Thanks, Chris.
Cool. Happy to help, Scott.
Scott, all right. We actually have a new RL customer joining tonight, and she has a question. So, of course, I'm going to bring her on. Kate, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be back and see some familiar faces. It's been a while since I've been able to join, but Chris and community wanted to just get your take on this wonderful macroeconomic climate that we're all marinating in, and what sort of tactics or thoughts you have on the impact of pipeline and what marketers can do to, keep driving things forward and in spite of the realities of all these external factors.
Totally. Yeah. So I have spoken about sort of this before, so I'm not going to reiterate some of those things, but I do want to address this because I think it's interesting. In what we're experiencing right now is a major pullback, like a pullback and stall, right? We're in the midst of a stall. Especially in the public markets, it was a little bit earlier. The private markets felt them later. VCs knew it was coming. VCs told me this starting in November. And then it really started to take effect in March, but really after Q1 earnings. So in April, Q1 earnings came out, and then April was out, and May was pretty slow too. But when you have a pullback and a stall, it doesn't happen forever. So companies look and they say, I need to pull back and stall. I'm going to freeze hiring. I might need to cut people. I don't want to have to lay off people more than once, so I'm going to cut a lot of people, and then I'm going to be able to, if I need to, cut variable expenses later that are easier to leave, like an agency or this expensive SaaS platform or stuff like that. So companies sort of make choices and prioritize what are the things that I'm going to get rid of and what are the things that I need, right? In this economic time, it's pretty, I don't think many companies are going to get rid of Salesforce, you know what I mean, and move to Zoho to save a couple bucks, right? Some of that's like, so there's some products that you're in there, right? If you generate tangible business value, drive revenue or operational efficiencies, and the customer realizes that, like, you're going to continue to be in there as long as you continue to perform. But when the pressure happens, they're going to get rid of things that they think are not making an impact. So they're like kind of thinking in the back of their head, like, I'm not sure if this is working, or I don't want to work with this vendor, or those types of things. And then they just get the enough pressure to force them to make the decision to move on it, right? So everything's good. A bunch of money's flowing in March. Like, no, we don't need to make that decision. Let's just let it ride. Then things slow down. Okay, we got to make some decisions, which things, and then you start to make them. But it doesn't happen forever. So like companies right now are going to make adjustments. In our business, we're making adjustments, right? When a pullback happens, it's some of the best opportunities to look at your business and say, where are we vulnerable, right? We just got a bunch of pressure. We're going to see where we're experiencing where we're vulnerable. We're going to be able to clean a couple of these things up. It's going to put pressure, and it can force us to innovate, right? I'm so grateful that this time happened, because the strategic plan that I have for my company has gotten 20x better in the past 30 days. We have a way better plan to move forward now than we have. And like, that's what a lot of people say. Like, it forces you to rethink strategy. And then like in the 2020 pandemic, like restaurants that adjusted to delivery really won, right? Some companies that adjusted to a direct-to-consumer model or were more ready to move into a more of a digital marketing execution did really well. So to put it simply, like, it's going to be a pullback. Companies are going to start spending money again. It's already happening, like starting now, moving forward. Companies are already investing back, but they're going to stop doing stuff that they thought wasn't working, and they're going to look deeply. They're going to think about, how am I going to innovate? And they're going to look for new strategies. And on the marketing side, what companies are going to do is they're going to shift budget from capturing demand to creating demand. Because in a pullback, natural demand for every category, almost every category, not every category, almost every category will decline. And going to fight in Google with all the other vendors in that category over a decreasing amount of demand is a losing game. What's much smarter is to back out, change your strategy, create demand, and then bypass that whole loop completely. So I think that the resulting things that will happen, companies will spend way differently on Google search. I have a hypothesis, and we're going to try and do a large-scale retrospective data analysis on this, that most companies that use Google search are net negative. They spend more money on Google than they actually make in revenue, and that includes branded terms. If you exclude the branded terms, they're way underwater. And so we're going to try and do research and pull that data in aggregate, because the Google as an algorithm takes credit for all the branded searches that were going to happen anyway, and they just click on the paid link instead of the organic link and take credit for millions of dollars of ARR that would have happened anyway. And then if you look at just the non-branded terms independently against revenue, which are the only ones where Google ads are really needed, the performance is really bad. So I think the companies will underspend or reduce spend in Google. I think that companies will shift more spend to creating demand. I hope that if they're going to do that, they'll change how they measure marketing. I feel positive that this will drive strong, like positive changes for a lot of companies, because it's going to force them to rethink how they do marketing, because it's one of the most vulnerable parts of their company right now. What do you think?
Yeah, we are. Well, I joined, we do events. So, and I joined the company about 2 months ago. Actually, I have my colleague Camille on here as well. So we're thinking about, how we can reposition messaging as well, just to kind of speak to the efficiency and the value that our platform can drive in spite of, the economic climate. So I think there's a messaging review that I'm doing, as well as just, from a industry perspective, some are more volatile than others. So, where can we kind of speak to our value?
Is it a virtual event platform, or did I mishear that? Or you do events?
No, our event platform is called Splash.
Got it. Okay.
So, yep.
But it's an event platform.
Yep. Repeatable everyday events. So, is our kind of bread and butter.
So like like what we're doing right now.
Yep. We're doing town halls, scrums,
internal,
product
external,
seminars,
doesn't matter.
demos. Yep.
Got it. And are you feeling a decrease in demand?
No, I think OpGen is slow, and we're kind of making the pivot to Hero Pipeline as of this week. So we're on the journey.
Yeah.
But we definitely saw a softening in April across conversions and certainly win rate across industries. So
do you think it's sort of like the Zoom effect? Like if you look at Zoom's like stock price, do you think your business follows a similar pattern? Like growth rate was very strong during the pandemic, and then sort of like demand has recorrected permanently?
No, I don't think we actually have that like recorrection, mainly because, we've noticed just, leaning into, we've always been, in real life, in-person events. We've always had a virtual platform. So we've actually done kind of quite well throughout, the pandemic, which has been great. So, and continued like a hockey stick trajectory. Obviously a little slowdown in 2020, but I think that's where like the lean into virtual was valuable for us. So having kind of the all-in-one platform, and the fact that we serve events that are every day and a need. I mean, companies are trying to harness employees in, remote capacities and in person. We're not, eliminating that opportunity either. It's just a little more fluid for event planners to figure out what's appropriate for their event playbook, and speaking to the market more effectively than, we have in the past.
So I'm going to assume that you basically have two big buyers. For the external, it's probably marketing, right? You're doing events and things like that. It's probably marketing. For that audience, that would be leaning into community. Like the move on community is obvious, and the market is going to go that way, and they're going to struggle because of how they measure it, right? So it makes sense in theory, but this is more for the listeners afterwards. Like if you're trying to do community and use attribution software like you're doing right now, it's going to look like it's failing. I talk to companies that have killer communities and can't prove anything about it because of how they measure marketing. But there's like one audience there, and helping companies try and figure out, how am I going to measure the success of this? That would be, I think, one for community. And on the internal side, it's probably ops, internal comms, maybe IT is the buyer on that side. And I don't have a good insight on what, if you need to shift messaging there, but for marketing, I think leaning into community would be a good move.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Great to have you here. Can't wait to see how this goes and get you on the Hero Pipeline train.
Yeah, we're excited.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming tonight, Kate, and thanks for coming back, Camille. All right, we've got a couple more people up for questions next. Lisa, thanks for your patience. I'm going to bring you on so that you can ask your question live. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Megan. So I have recently inherited a demand gen team, and I'm not sure that it's set up for success. I have never led a demand gen team in the past, although I have over 20 years of marketing and ops experience. So I'm curious to know, what is the current day best organizational model in setting up a demand gen team?
You mean like org structure or broader than that?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. Today we're organized by, we have a content team, we have a campaign management team, a campaign ops team, a lead management team. And going forward, I think that may need to change.
Yeah.
But
how many employees does that work at the company total? Just so people have a sense of the scale.
we, how many employees? Let's see, over 20,000.
Okay. I think a lot of light bulbs went off for people, because based on how you described the roles, I was like, this has got to be a huge company.
Yes, it is. And however, this demand gen team just supports our U.S. division, and there's about 10 employees right now on the team. And I'm just thinking that it's not set up correctly. I have researched, kind of the latest and greatest on how the best demand gen teams are structured, how they, whether it's positions and workflow and jobs to be done on the teams. And there's not a lot of information out there. So this is my next best place to ask.
Happy to help here. So I want to back up a step, because like in the way that I see it is that most companies' marketing teams and demand gen teams don't fail because the org structure is wrong on the demand gen team, or because they don't have this person. That's usually not why teams succeed or fail. The reasons why teams succeed or fail, in my opinion, all across the board, from small companies to me talking to companies that do hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. The reasons are how companies measure the success of marketing that prevents them from doing things that work and keeps them stuck, right? I spent 10 minutes at the beginning talking about how that a component of that companies just get stuck in how they measure it. The second piece is the mindset of the executives that make decisions that have marketing be mainly used to help sales do sales versus creating demand. Everything stems from there. The mindset and the metrics and everything stems from there. So then you get into tactics, then you get into which roles do I need, then we get into how do we spend our budget, and it cascades, and then you eventually get to these are the people that I have and how I structure my team. But if you think about it more like a foundation, like the foundations of marketing are like, we need to have the right mindset at the company about what marketing does. Then the next sort of like, we're going up in like the food pyramid or whatever, the next one is like, we need to have the right measurement set up so that marketing can operate across all three dimensions of demand: creating demand, damning demand, and capturing demand. Today, most marketing teams only operate in one dimension, capturing demand. Then we have, like, once we measure marketing appropriately, we do audience and user research. We understand our customers, we understand how they buy, how they want to buy, where they listen to things. We understand the gaps in the market. We are able to position our business in the right way, that type of stuff. Then we go up and we say, okay, based on that user research, this is going to be how we actually approach marketing, right? We're going to approach it heavily from social. We're going to approach it heavily from high touch events, whatever people decide. And then it's who do we need, right? So I've kind of made that up on the fly, but you get what I'm saying about how it works up. And like, the people that you have on the team and how it's structured only really matter if all the other pieces are set up appropriately below it. So that's sort of like my hot take would be to take a step back and look at sort of like the other things why. But because you came with the question, let's definitely get it answered, which is like, how would you structure it? Lately, I've been like really interested in structuring it around specific programs. And then so like, if you think about this, like demand gen live or the like live events with Chris Walker as a program, and we do one on Tuesday. We do one every other Thursday with a guest. I do some random ones along the way. I'm guests on podcasts, but they're basically all me like being interviewed or speaking that creates some level of a long form video content, and that becomes a program. And so you need the me, right? You need somebody that's like is able to either speak or write or otherwise like engage with your audience and provide tangible business value, and ideally communicate a clear point of view, a differentiated point of view in the market about where the market's going and what needs to change. Some people, we've been calling that a subject matter expert. I actually think that a more appropriate title for it at this point is an evangelist. So, and maybe it's some blend of the two, because you kind of need both. You need to be able to evangelize and you need to have the expertise in order to be credible. So you need that person. And then depending on the, like building up, depending on the flow, you're going to need some level of like creative resources, right? Who's going to edit the video? Who's going to edit the podcast? Things like that. So you sort of have like the creative person. Then you have like somebody that's sort of like project managing, like strategy, figuring that type of stuff out. We call that a content strategist. And there's someone on my team, Todd, that sort of like owns the strategy of like, how are we going to cut the clips? What's the podcast schedule going to be? Things like that. And you sort of have a team that's built around that. And now we're doing another one. We have another event, another program around what we call Stacking Growth, which has other people that are on the podcast. I'm not involved in it. And there's a strategist, like at least one creative. And then we have a mix of people that are the subject matter expert, evangelist, guests on the podcast. You sort of have a second program. So anyway, you have programs. Another person in there that I play the role of, but you might need in a business like yours is the distribution person, right? So I post the stuff myself, but you might need somebody else to post through the company page and place the media and things like that. That would be a distributor. So you kind of have 4 people on that team. And then you have supporting functions depending on how the company is structured and where they draw the lines, right? So I talk to a lot of companies of your size where like the website isn't owned by demand gen, product marketing isn't owned by demand gen, oftentimes content isn't owned by demand gen. It's like, what does demand gen do then? Just buy
That's my
ads?
struggle.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just like you like the problem is how they think about demand gen that basically limits you and you can't do anything, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can't run demand gen without content.
Right.
So trying to and then I've talked with companies of your size and it's like, okay, like because of how the organization is structured, if you can't get the content, you need to figure out how to create a program that I just talked about, right? Maybe you own field, right? Maybe field is in demand gen, or maybe events is in demand gen. So let's run an event and then like we're doing right now, and then we create a program around the event, and then we sort of secondarily get recorded content that then we can run demand with. So those are a couple of things. And then you have an ops side, right? We have a centralized ops function. We don't have a specific person on the marketing team that runs ops. But you could have a like campaign ops or marketing ops type of person that's sort of also part of the team. But then you have like programs, ops, and field in lieu of content, right? So let me back up. Let me just kind of complete the thought so that we're good. Like if I was doing it, like programs would include subject matter expertise, content, and distribution for the program, right? So it's not like you have one person on the team that runs Google ads, another person on the team that runs Facebook ads, another person on the team that runs LinkedIn ads, and then organics, another person on the team runs organic social, because then all they do is they compete for credit across all channels. I've seen this story a million times, you know what I mean? So you got so what we're looking for is attribution that the program is working, not necessarily that the channel is working. The program's working, and then breaking down in the channels using self-reported attribution, you get really great data. And then you have ops, and then you have field. And that seems like, maybe I'm like missing something because I didn't plan it, but those are kind of like the big ones for me.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, and that's moving us because right now it's set up as a channel, so it's set up in the way that you described, where one person does all social, one person does, all of this, one person does all of that. And so basically what you're saying is organize around your campaign or your program, and almost like the word pod comes to mind, but you have a campaign and you've got specific people that around that campaign, and it's like replicating another pod that's maybe running another program, supporting another program. It's got the same roles on that, but they're focused on that particular campaign.
And then your job is sort of like, I call it the architect, right? Like somebody's got to orchestrate. If we're running 2 or 3 programs at the same time, how's everything like moving together? What are big events in our company that I need to figure out how to mix in, right? The programs are sort of like always on, recurring, but there's going to be like one-time things that come in, events, lightning strikes, things like that you'll probably need to coordinate, or someone on the team will need to be able to.
Exactly.
But that's like, it's a really simple way to do it. And as a marketer through and through, like I really want to have the flexibility to use LinkedIn the way that it's designed, the way that it should be used, right? And the only way that you can do that is if you own LinkedIn and Google and the website and Facebook, because then you can use them in the right way. If you only use LinkedIn, this is exactly what Scott kind of talked about it. It's not exactly relevant, but there's so many people that either they have a LinkedIn ads agency, or they have a LinkedIn that they're paying $5K a month, or an in-house person that's running LinkedIn ads, and that's the only thing they do. And then the only thing that they can do with their $50,000 a month budget is burn it on lead gen, because there's no other way to get attribution. So
makes sense.
It's a soup. Yeah, I'm getting more and more familiar with companies that have thousands of employees and the challenges in them, and org structure and how they divide demand gen has been a big one as well. But the measurement and how they think about it is sort of like the underlying cause.
Yeah, we've been probably for the past year, and I know it should have been longer, but unfortunately this is a large company. It's like turning the Titanic, and we have been really trying to defocus and de-emphasize MQLs across leadership, which is just an education process, and it takes some behavior change, and we are really striving hard to drive that and move the metrics in a different direction. So we're getting there, but these are just
run the split the funnel analysis. Someone will be able to find the episode or drop it, or you'll be able to find it in the podcast. Like and this is for everybody, if you're trying to show leadership that the MQL model isn't working, then just literally map it out from lead to closed won by conversion source, and mark every single step, and then calculate metrics like lead to win, sales cycle length, SQL win rate, customer acquisition cost, pipeline velocity, and then sort them by pipeline velocity. And then you'll see the natural ones that I always talk about not working fall to the bottom. And I know that because I've done these analyses more than 20 times. I just see the exact same things fall to the bottom every time, which is like gated content syndication across any channel, right? A third party that's like just pushing email addresses into your automation system. I don't really call LinkedIn lead gen ads for gated content syndication, but technically it is. But like any type of paid social with lead gen forms to gate content, all that stuff's going to fall right to the bottom, because you're just collecting emails for people that don't have intent to buy.
Yeah.
But if you run the split the funnel, like it, most executives that I've shown, there's definitely been executives that kind of like put their head in the sand and ignore the data because they just don't want to hear it. But a lot of people that are smart and understand, like especially sales leaders, respond very positively to this, because it's effectively just wasting their time, their sales team's time.
Yep, agree.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Cool. Great to have you on here, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. We have 2 of our regulars that I think will wrap up our AMA tonight. So first I'm going to bring on Bob, and then our good friend Dave. So Bob, let me get you on. Or as some people tonight calling you Robert.
Hello.
Hey.
Yo, Bob, what's up?
I have a technical question for you. I actually have 2 questions depending on the time here. So one technical question I've hung my hat on since pretty much the beginning, running the paid social strategy that you advised us on, was, and I blame Gaetano for this because he planted the seed early on, was that it was all about website speed. And I tested our site back then and it
I
was
remember.
terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I rebuilt the site and like it's blazing fast. What I noticed immediately after was number one, if you look at like Google Analytics behavior with like the engagement rates, and you see like 95% of the paid social hits dropped in less than 10 seconds. And then it has like different timestamps, 1 minute, 3 minutes, whatever it is, 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And once I switched, all the metrics improved pretty significantly. Like that number went down, the top number went down 20%, and all that time on page was distributed across all the other timestamps.
Okay.
Number of pages per session went up like, one, from 1 to 1.5. So they were half, some percentage of people were clicking into other pages.
Mm-hmm.
So I just looked at that as like additional message consumption. So I looked at it as a win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Time on page was like 9 seconds, average went up to like 45 seconds for a landing page. So I looked at it from that perspective. And since then, I've looked at a couple different companies' sites and I've looked at their Google Analytics, and I've come to the conclusion on my side that Gaetano is right. Like if it takes more than 2 seconds for that mobile landing page to load, people bounce out. I was curious if you've looked at it across your customer base, because I've been hanging my hat on this pretty hard, telling people like these page builder templates got to go. You're spending $50,000 a month on ads, and you're losing like 95% of your people before the page even loads. Am I crazy, or where am I looking at? By the way, my neighborhood peacock's in my driveway right now, so I'll go on
neighborhood peacock, huh?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Must be in California. So the first thing is that the time on page metric is actually very misunderstood. The time on page metric can only be calculated if you go to a second page. So if you land on the page, spend 5 minutes on it, and bounce, it gets logged as a 0. So, and most paid social visits will only last for the one page and then a bounce. So it appears to be 0, but it's really not. And the reason that you saw an improvement is because more people went to a second page. So when more people go to a second page, it registers you know what I mean? It registers how long they've been there. And so if 5% go to a second page, will still pull the average up from 0 quite a bit. So that's sort of the time on page metric. If you actually look at how it's defined, it's a confusing metric, and it confuses a lot of our customers when they look at it and they see the time on page is low when it's really just that people are consuming and bouncing. So that's one piece of it. The second thing is that as of like at least 12 months ago, probably between when Gaetano and I sort of directed you to go this way and where we are, somewhere about halfway in between, we, through the data of seeing that companies would go see the ads, not click on them, and then convert on the website within 1, 7, or 30 days on Facebook ads before iOS 14.5 happened. And we would run these ads, and the company would get 120 demos a month, and 73 of them would get attributed to Facebook ads. That we started to move all in on in-feed consumption and prioritized website engagement significantly less. I'm sure that some of the teams that work here, I'm not involved in every one. It's not, for my understanding, it's not part of the process. I'm sure some of the teams are looking at website speed. But the fact of the matter is that most people don't click on the ads, right? Most of it's like 99.6% of people don't click on LinkedIn ads. So there's only a small percentage of people that do get there. So that's sort of the answer here. Is I've deprioritized it. You're in a little bit more of a direct response game, which is fine, right? It's working for you, and if anything's working, then keep doing it. You know what I mean? If it's actually driving revenue, working is the thing that you need to define well. But if it's keep working, like keep rolling with it. But I would be interested from you if there's a lot of people that are seeing the ads, going to the website later, and then converting and showing up as organic search or direct.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And the ads that I run are all about delivering the message in the feed. I'm not even worried about getting the links over. I'm just looking at that as a component of it. Because again, when they come back, they may be coming back on their phone again too, and I want them to have a good user experience. So I think you're definitely spot on there. I'll jump to a different question because this one pertains to my business. This one's outside your normal wheelhouse, I'm sure, but yeah. I've been tasked with this from my CEO. A huge portion of our business is national accounts, national retail accounts where there's an eye doctor in a store, and a big retailer, and it's a huge portion of our business where we actually staff the location. So the on-site technicians are ours, and so there's a higher cost of operation there versus Joe Optical store where we provide the services and every exam revenue we do is in the black, versus other sites there's an overhead involved. So those are our sites, like those are our customer sites, and or they're our managed locations. So I've been tasked with trying to increase exam volume at these locations. Now the caveat is, historically for most doctor groups, Google search pays off great because they have the optical sale, they have medical billing, and they can make $500 on a patient on the first visit.
Yeah,
totally $6,000 lifetime value, $500 first year. Ours is $75 first year. So what advertising can I do? I've been trying Google search, but really haven't even gotten a whole lot of clicks. Maybe I need to do some better Google search. I'm thinking organic social. I tried paid social, didn't really generate anything. It was a waste of dollars. I think I was just trying to raise brand awareness around these geographies using geo-targeting, for Facebook ads.
Yeah.
And I'm at a kind of a loss on what to do besides like stepping up our serious TikTok game and get, because it's direct to the consumer.
Yeah.
But we need a very low cost of acquisition. So I was just curious to get your take, because I know in the past you've advised some people. I remember a coffee business one time. You advised someone like 2 years ago on some ideas and some strategies. So I was just curious if you had any strategies that I could pass off as my own and look like a hero.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of options here because of where it is, right? You have a bunch of different locations around the U.S. It needs to be localized, right? So if you wanted to do it, just more or less, how many locations are there? Hundreds? I can't see. Three. There's 300. Okay, let's just go with 300. Like, you would actually have to replicate the strategy locally 300 times. Like, the effort in order to, because you need to do the location, run the ads, and then create another ad set and do another location, run the ads, and go over and over and over again, and have a different optimization cycle in every one of them. It's totally not feasible. The only
That's what I was doing, Chris, by the way.
Yeah, it's totally not feasible.
Dozens as a test, so it was a lot of time consuming.
Yeah, it's totally not feasible. The only option that you have here is like trying to land the got milk version for eye care on TikTok. Like, that's all you got, and the odds of that happening are pretty low. And even if you hit it, a lot of people are going to go to a different eye doctor, right? Because it's not going to be brand. It's just going to be awareness of that you should go to the eye doctor. Not that you should go to Bob's 300 locations of eye doctors. So I would say that this is a mission that is destined to fail. I don't sugarcoat it around here.
No, that's okay. I was on mute. Now, listen, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a really interesting business model. The company's been successful in many locations, and it's like, how do you what's that X factor that why is one location really successful, another one you want to increase volume at? What can you do? And so we're looking at some different things.
It's their job. You know what I mean? It's your customer's job to get, if they're going to take most of the economics, to execute marketing the brand for hundreds of locations across the country, right?
Agreed.
And then doing
we agree on that.
Yeah, so it's really their job. You don't have enough incentive, enough economic upside, enough you could do all this work and then they could cut you.
You want to talk about trying to steer a large ship? You can imagine we're talking about the largest retailers in the world, a couple of them, and trying to change those bureaucracies. So again, you try to take ownership of it and say, what can we do? And so listen, I appreciate your feedback on it. We're right there. I mean, I'm stepping towards some sort of TikTok play for the organization, just because the cost of acquisition is zero, and we have to do, to not put the head in the sand and try to do something. So certainly always appreciate your guidance. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and if I was doing that, I would educate people on like what the routines are for eye care, right? Be the WebMD of eye care, not the like advertiser for Luxottica or whoever it is, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, certainly get it. Totally. Thank you.
Cool. Good to see you, Bob.
Good to have you as always, Bob. All right. Dave, you're up next, and I think will be our closing question tonight. Welcome, Dave. It's always good to have you and to see you.
Thank you, Megan. Good to see you. Chris, how are you doing?
Dave, what's happening? Great to have you here as always.
Doing great. Sorry I haven't been around for a while. Hello, everybody. All the old regulars. I guess I'm looking for advice. I'm not really sure this is a question. And I'm really hoping you're not going to tell me I also have a mission impossible because my mission is literally to try to save the world. So
okay.
I work with a group of people who are 100% committed to helping climate tech companies get off the ground. And the problem with climate tech companies is that many of them are founded by people from STEM backgrounds, science, technology, engineering, and math. Many of them don't have business degrees, certainly have no experience in sales and marketing. What I'm finding is that they see sales as a necessary evil, but they are totally disdainful of marketing. So we are trying to avoid talking about marketing. We're trying to frame really what is their problem. And as I see it, their problem is that they've got to have a highly innovative, often technically complex solution understood by their market and adopted by their market, not just fast enough to provide cash flow to fund their business, but fast enough to make enough difference to reduce carbon emissions to the point where the world can meet the deadlines that climate scientists have told them they need to work toward. So that's the mission. The challenge is I started posting on LinkedIn every day for 30 days, followed everybody's advice, including Justin Welch's, and basically came up with crickets. No substantial interest. I have about 1,600 followers. I have 900, 1,000 connections, and so on. Can't get any distribution, can't get any significant engagement. And not only that, I've also tried writing on the coattails of people who might have an audience, as you've suggested doing, commenting on other people's posts. Mm-hmm. What I find is in this field, climate tech, almost nobody has an audience. I have yet to find anybody who has a significant audience. So we're kind of at the leading edge of innovation, trying to create a category among people who don't understand the value of what we're selling. In some ways, I think our situation is very similar to yours when you started out, Chris, and you became frustrated by, nobody's interested in demand creation, everybody's interested in lead generation. Mm-hmm. So here's my question, if I have one. It is, I don't know if I'm just looking for encouragement, like keep trying, be persistent, or if you have some advice about what I should do differently or how I should think about this differently in order to get to the point where we feel like we're getting some traction.
Mm-hmm. Would you consider Elon Musk in climate tech or no? Just so I can understand.
Not directly. No, I don't think he's in climate tech. I mean, I think he is. Now that I think of it, his energy, his solar panels, his solar tiles mm-hmm. for roofs, and his battery business, those are definitely climate tech. And arguably, the Tesla car is also climate tech, mm-hmm. but I don't think he positions it that way. I think other aspects of his business are.
Yeah. I was thinking when you mentioned that there's like nobody out there with an audience, that was the first thing that came to me. It was like, it feels like they did. A couple other things that I took notes running through my head, and then we'll sort of like make our way to where we're going, is that there are a lot of founders that are great product people that should either find a 50-50 partner or sell the IP to somebody else to run the business because they're not a business professional.
Right.
So, and it's difficult for people to acknowledge that in their seat, but they overcomplicate things. They focus on the technology, not what the customer wants. Exactly. They produce messaging that for those reasons, they produce messaging that doesn't resonate with the customer. or they don't even try in the first place, right? Like, oh, I don't believe in marketing. I'm just gonna like create this technology and people are gonna want it, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, like the next thing is, are you working with lots of companies or just one company?
Well, the goal is to work with a handful of select companies. We've
Early
identified.
stage?
I'm sorry?
Early stage?
Well, unfortunately, I think they're almost all early stage.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you're trying to maximize your impact, I would be looking for companies that are further along.
True. I think that's a really good point. However, there are a lot of highly innovative companies that are starved for capital right now. And we also have a source of capital. But you're right. I mean, really, the goal is to achieve maximum impact. Right?
Yeah, so
I mean, the clock is ticking on this issue.
Yeah.
And we want to get as much of this technology diffused and accepted as fast as possible. That's the goal. It's not even making money. It is enabling this level of innovation.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I were you and that was the goal, I'd be focused on finding companies that are already farther along, that it's clear that it's going to work. It's just how well are they going to work? And I would use my impact to make them work better, rather than sort of like working with 5 and hoping that one comes out of it, because I don't know what the stats are, but like it's not 20% of those companies that are successful. So the odds are that 0 of the ones that you're working with are going to actually work. So trying to figure out a way to increase your odds of success. And that would be I think that's one good takeaway. Now talk to me about what are you trying to accomplish when you're posting on LinkedIn and getting no interest? Are you trying to like raise awareness, trying to get customers for these companies? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, it's really, I'm trying to educate. So raise awareness of the problem. And basically the problem, as I see it, is that it really doesn't matter how good your idea is or your technology is, if you don't understand what it takes to educate the market about the value of your solution to the point where you are creating demand. So, I think a lot of people, I mean, I've worked with demand creation for highly innovative products for my entire career. And what I've learned is, actually, a lot of people on this call probably are familiar with this. The idea that demand creation for highly innovative products goes through a series of stages. And it's been well studied, well documented. It's called the diffusion of innovation. So there's a process that occurs. But people from STEM backgrounds probably have no background in social sciences, and they don't understand this. So they think they're going to put out a great idea and it's suddenly going to become widely accepted, when in fact there are a million barriers to it becoming accepted, things that they don't anticipate. And that's where we offer real expertise. So we have to inform people about what is the problem. They have unrealistic expectations for the size of their market, the pace of their growth, how they can make this happen. And they probably think, because their investors are telling them this, that the best way to make things grow is to hire a sales team. Right?
Probably.
And everybody on this call knows that that's ridiculous, because sellers cannot diffuse innovation, cannot educate audiences nearly as cost effectively or as fast as marketers can.
Highly inefficient. Right? Yeah, you're right. So another, like, as we talk through it, I think there'll be a couple nuggets in here. The next one I think is like, it feels like you're trying to join a team when you know the head coach can't coach the team. You know what I mean? It's almost like you got to figure out what team do I want to be on and what coach do I want to play for, and then move it. This is for everybody now, right? This is advice for everybody. When you're joining a company, like, you're clearly aligned with the mission, Dave, right? The things that matter are mission, market, leadership, and product, right? You're clearly aligned with the mission. You're clearly like, if you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't think the product had a shot, but it seems like you have a lot of misalignment in the leadership being able to guide the company to success. And you almost need to have all 4 buckets in, like 4 of those categories in the right direction in order to achieve the impact that I can feel it from you. I know that you want to accomplish this, right? And so picking, like, you keep mentioning STEM background, don't get it, don't understand how to create demand, those things, like there are a couple people out there that do get it, right? Or they've been smart enough to say, I don't get it. I'm going to be the CTO and I'm going to hire a CEO and give them 20% of the company, right? Something like that has happened. And you want to find those people because they're going to be smart. They're going to understand the customer insights. They're going to value creating demand. They're probably going to be further along where your skills can really be an accelerant to what they're doing. So a while back, I don't know how long ago, but a while back, I decided that I wanted to be gasoline for fires that were already lit, not over here trying with like a match and whatever, trying to get the fire to start. And I just think that you get a bigger impact that way.
That's a good metaphor. Just to be clear, Chris, something you said made me wonder if maybe I miscommunicated. The point is, I work with a team of experts who want to facilitate the process of getting innovations accepted in the marketplace on behalf of clients.
Yeah, I did misunderstand that. You're right. I was thinking that you were a consultant for a handful of companies. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I haven't signed up with a team. What we're looking for is a tribe of people who see things the way we do and who are eager to seek the kind of help we can offer. To me, it's very similar to what you did with Refine Labs.
So yeah, I would like if it real like that sounds like building a community, right? Building a community of like-minded people to accomplish a goal. So then I would look at what's our point of view, and then I would start to create events and community like things, and then like Demand Gen Live, you start and 9 people show up, and then the next week 8 do, and then the next week 12 do, and you block by block you build it, and then all of a sudden you look back and the podcast has 50 episodes and 100 people are here, and you got a couple of companies that get it, that want to be involved with you. I think that I think it's a shift in strategy to not only be writing on LinkedIn, but to really build a community element into it, and to like understand that what you're trying to do is actually quite challenging. You might have to look in pockets to find the people that are as passionate about this as you are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. But that's helpful. I think what I'm relieved is you haven't told me that what I'm trying to do is
isn't
crazy
a failed mission.
Way off base.
Yeah, this isn't a failed mission. I think you just need an adjustment of strategy. But this is 100. If you want to do this, you can definitely do it. The question is, how long is it going to take you to do it? But this is possible.
Yeah. How much patience do we have? How much energy do we have?
Yeah.
And so on. Yeah. Okay. Good. Helpful answer. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Good to see you again.
Happy to help, Dave. Great to talk with you.
Great to have you, Dave. All right, I think that wraps up our AMA for tonight. We had a good show. Any closing thoughts, Chris, that you want to share before we wrap it up?
Yeah, it's interesting, and this is maybe we'll do a talk on this at some point. But it's interesting, like kind of following up from Dave's chat. Like I studied engineering in college. I am a product person, right? But if you want to be the CEO of a business, you got to learn all the facets of the business. I'm actually quite surprised how many people that either want to be a CEO or are a CEO don't take the time to learn and understand the functions in the business at a detailed enough level to guide it, right? Like I have a point of view on every single function in our business, and definitely have a point of view on marketing, right? So let's go a step further. The fact that in 2022 that CEOs of businesses, large and small, startup, no customers, just got their seed round, 1,000 employee, Series E company, everything in between, publicly traded, that CEOs do not take the time necessary to understand how marketing works today, because it is one of the number one most important levers in order to build and grow a business today. Just like most CEOs in 2008 loved sales and wanted to learn and understand sales so much because that was the driver. And just 14 years later, just because of how buyers buy and the fact that we'll put together an estimate at some point using real data, but the estimate is 87% of the buying process is done before they engage with a vendor, and 99% of the market isn't in buy mode. So that's like greater than 99% of all available buying process people that could buy are not buying right now, which means that you need to do marketing to them, not sales. So there's just there's been a shift in how this all works, and I feel that executives, specifically CEOs, have not caught up to this, and I think that it would be a massive advantage for the ones, especially ones that are listening to this podcast. Maybe you're like me, and you're like, in 5 years, I want to start my company. Then I said that to myself, and when I was 26, I actually did it faster than I expected. And then I took the steps to figure out what are the things that I'm going to need to learn and know in order to effectively do this. And if you're trying to be a CEO, like you got to understand how to do contemporary marketing and creating demand and positioning the product. So we'll leave it at that. That was a cool thought. Appreciate everyone being here. We had some good dialogues. We talked about how, and I'll maybe, re-listen to this and reflect and come back with even more thoughts on the reasons why B2B companies don't innovate. But there was a lot of good stuff in here. Appreciate you all being here. We got a couple of live events. We do our Demand Gen Live next week, and then we'll be off the following week because I'll be in Europe speaking at the Work Smarter conference and then taking a little bit of a break. So we will be off the week of the 20th, June 20th. We will not be doing Demand Gen Live, but look forward to seeing you next week and the week after. Have a great night, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Have a great week.
Recording stopped.